Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
And let's welcome Alex again. I think this must be over 100 sessions that you've appeared, Alex, without fail. And we do appreciate you sharing the knowledge as you understand it. And we're looking forward to what you'd like to serve us today as far as knowledge and understanding. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for your dedication, not only here, but across this planet and many of the other language communities, as you've done over the years. So thank you again, and welcome.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mark. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing to make these meetings so effective. As you can see, it is beyond the North American team here. I want to welcome the North American team, South American, European, Asian, Australian. We're here from all over. Did I miss a continent?
No, but there's probably a few here from the universal community. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind, and yeah, it's it's a lot to digest, really, and so we're talking about mentally and emotionally to digest this, because we're into a new phase. And so let us begin with this, because we want to get on to the teaching of Mr. Marin Tevakolikesh. And so thank you all for coming on this journey. I hope you have a lot of fun. So this is the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute, Teachings on Plasma Science. We're at the advanced inner space stage. We're going to open up the emotion of vision. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is March the 5th, 2023. This is the Kesh Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. And we have tried to advance from the basic teaching that we started, got into understanding, knowing, insight, earth space. We're now to inner space. Yeah, we call it advanced inner space, but you know what? This is all basic teaching. So we are trying to figure out how to navigate the universe here. One of the tools is the emotion of vision. So let's see if we can find outer space and continue our search for it. We are only finding that little sentimental pie in the sky, that little thing we call Earth, that little tiny red dot in the bottom right-hand corner. And in order to navigate, we're trying to understand the 3 books of Mr. Kesh. Number 1, the universal order of creation of matters, where we see the 3 matters come together. And so this is a point. three dimensions as a source. And the origin of the universe, book number 3, does energy from the soul and how it splits. And then the connection, the emotion, the vision, the structure of light, the link between the source and your soul. And how do we understand that? So basically, if we look at the universe and look at the positioning of the planets, we find that actually, although they're location specific, within the area of the sun, they only make up a small portion, a very small pie. And it's very interesting that this is all we see, and that seeing is believing. A lot of people believe that. And so that's effectively our emotion of position. But that emotion of position is only one point on that rotating field around the sun. And so we have to wonder, well, what's the rest of it? And well, the rest of it, of course, is the fact that all of these points aren't in alignment all the time. They don't always fit into that one neat sliver of a pie. But it gets worse, because as each of these planets move around into their different location, if you want to see them in their specific location, well, guess what? That pie becomes even smaller, because you're only focusing on that one planet. The planet that you may want to see is not in that little sliver pie. So what does this mean? How do we see the broader picture? And this becomes really difficult when we limit ourselves. So we have to understand that the universe is more than just time and distance and speed. And we have to figure out the relationship. And so we find that when we measure distances to other suns and other stars and other planets, measuring them in terms of light years is a failure in terms of reference. We need to reference a different way. And that limitation, of course, our scientists have put on it with respect to understanding nuclear science. And at this point, the best they could do is to blow things to pieces and consume as in nuclear reactors. But the energy transfer and the way of the creator with respect to the ethos, which involves morality, compassion, and courage, and I reference that because these are all part of the creation of life. And the life that was an important denominator is our Earth space. But we even disregard that one. We just look at our man space because that's our really, really lowest common denominator. And so this is what we want to talk about, because when we want to identify a proof of concept from a scientific point of view, we really discount our emotions, because it's not a manly thing; it's more a feminine thing, and so this has been the norm over the years, and so we find the number of clubs and the members being basically men at the exclusion of women. But in history, there have been some great women, and they have overcome this limitation. One wonders, is it possible that there are just as many great women as there's great men? Is that possible? And so when you look at the preference and sentimentality of this planet, and so you see that all of us who chose to be born, have chose to be born. And we were all born by choosing the outer space system. And we were all born into this inner space by default. It's then that we completed our journey of hitting the target, the Earth space. And so we've all done this equally. All of us have done this equally. So this is the proof. And science cannot refute that. So they refute things that are handy. And a handy thing to refute is the emotions. So we have a lot of confusion about the emotions, and we want to try and clarify, excuse me, try and clarify the emotions and the position of the emotions. And so we did dwell on the emotion of position as being that part that actually manifests the emotion of presence. The emotion of presence actually being the emotion of physicality and the emotion of man. And so are all these emotions different, or are they all the same? So we find that if we dig deeper, that they are different, but if we don't understand them, just like our soul, or just like our bodies, or just like our earth, we only see the single picture. And if we're looking at the single picture, then we're looking at a photo. And when you look at a photo, you don't know if it's coming or going. And so this is the problem with the emotion of vision. We don't know if it's coming or going either. So we got to start back at the basics. And we're looking at the surface to volume ratios, and we said that 1 and 1 is more than 2. That the 1 and 1 are the feeding dimensions, and one and the other one are not the same one. And then there's this feedback dimension, because we actually don't lose the 1 and the 1. We keep the 1 and the 1. And so those feeding dimensions remain. And so as these feeding dimensions are working, they have to have a feedback to fulfill the dimension, hence the maggraph. And the thing is, we're not part of this because we're just the observers, the ones who want to fudge the vision. We're in a different dimension, not of these 3 dimensions. And so we're trying to rationalize that, and it becomes very important, because when we look at the way the Earth is functioning, excuse me. Glitch in the universe.
Okay, Alex, we are getting a glitch every minute or two. It seems like there's a word or two missing. I'm just letting you know. I don't know what to do about that. It comes right back, but I just figured I'd let you know.
And that's probably one of the reasons I had some problems here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good from this point on, right?
Sounds fine.
Okay, so we are none of these dimensions, and we're trying to figure out which dimensions we are. And the thing is, we have to look at where we are as being one of those dimensions, because we're on Earth. And Earth has these 3 dimensions also. It has this rarefied magnetic keystone, and it also has the soul of the Earth in the core. And we live in between that area, which we call the biosphere. And so these are the 3 areas of reference with respect to the Earth space. And we're trying to figure out how do we relate to this Earth, because the Earth is rotating, we don't rotate. And we resolved that anomaly when we found that the souls live in the cells. And so the cells don't have legs. As a matter of fact, they don't have mouths. And but they certainly do have emotion. And so we've discussed that the emotion of presence is the amalgamation of the energies from the soul of the man, the soul of the body, and the soul of the cells. And so this affects our emotional position. How do we determine this emotional position? So a lot of people like to say, well, seeing is believing. Well, today we need to discuss this seriously, because for those from Missouri, they believe their experiences. And yet they have a problem, because even though they believe what they see, one sees a rainy day and says, what a glorious day. And the other sees a rainy day and says, oh, what a depressing day. So there's an anomaly there. And I thought, if you believe what you see, that everybody would see the same thing. So that argument then, pardon the pun, doesn't hold water. Okay? Because it isn't just seeing what you believe. You experience your belief. Because another two people might say, you know what, I'm living heaven on earth. And another one may say, it's raining every day. Life dealt me a bad hand. And so, wait a second. There's another anomaly here. So whether you believe your experiences or you experience your beliefs, people seem to fudge this up for the sake of something. And I wonder what the sake of something is. So another question, we know that when we go to sleep, we go to dream, we get dream visions. But there's different forms of what we refer to as a sleep, because we could just be in a state of suspended animation, or we could be deep in thought, or we can have imagination, or better still, daydreams. And what is the difference between day and night dreams? They're all dream visions, aren't they? And so these visions somehow manifest themselves. When we define manifestation, then it's a perception. And it's a perception of, we have stacker units and universal cups. And so it's a perception of that kind of reality. And that reality is a manifestation. So we find that a plasma feeding is what leads to this manifestation. This is a key point. And we've tried to make this key point because we seem to confuse that manifestation is a touchy-feely form artifact. And if it's touchy-feely, that it's physical. but not necessarily, because it's emotional. There's emotional people who are very touchy, very feely, and so that is non-tangible. And when we see things, and I say, well, you know, seeing is believing. Well, you're seeing, but you're not believing, and or you're not seeing, and you're still having an anomaly. So there's a plasmatic reality and a physical reality. And we seem to be selective in what we see. And so when we look at any manifestation point, there's an emotional context to that. And that emotion of presence is a form artifact. And so the emotion of position is determined by that reality dimension, whatever that dimension is. And if that dimension becomes physicality, then that manifestation becomes materialization, the materialization into the lowest form of energy, the physicality. And so if we wish to travel, we really have to dematerialize. And is that so outrageous? When we look at the fact that we were born, we went from a dematerialized point to a materialized point, didn't we? And when we have a thought, we can clearly see that thought. I mean, we tried that at the session last week, and we wanted to have a Chinese buffet. And I'm sure a lot of you could see your favorite meals there. And was that real? Was that materialized? Or was that in your vision? And was that vision a physical vision? Or was it an emotional vision? So understanding physicality or matter state, we see that the matter state can be physical and non-physical. And so we have to say that the plasmatic state is a feeding state and the physical state is a feedback state. So there's something that makes a commonality. And the way we've been doing things is we are dominant physical matter state. But not all physical matter states are perfect. And in fact, whatever percentage is perfect, it diminishes over time, and we call it aging. And so we wonder, where is this common defect denominator? And was it genetic, or was it given or acquired? And in the whole process of trying to find this, which is what we're all doing all our life, we look in what we call outer space, and we can't find outer space. We find sun space, planet space, moon space, and those spaces in between. And we want to conquer these spaces, and yet we're ignorant to the science. So how do we do this? Well, we'll find that out very soon, because we're doing the flight tests to the moon in not too distant future. And so this reality is going to hit a lot of people. And so let's estimate that there's about 95% of the population probably has no clue of what's going on. And so when they ask, they will find out. They will ask, what is plasma? You have to be quick. Tell them it's a kind of energy state, and it helps us understand our Earth space. When we understand that, then we can find our inner space sequences which unlock the key to the gateway to outer space. And that's pretty important, because the time between being born and dying is our time, and that time is important. And if it's not important, then nothing's important. So we in order of magnitude, and the way they exchange energy is the higher state feeds the lower state. And so there's creation, there's also decay, but there's also a catalytic energy transfer. And in the higher energy states, the transfer rate is higher. So fundamentally, very simply, plasma creates fields. And those fields can either absorb energy, or we can set up a barrier of energy. And the rules of engagement are bound to the ethos of the universe. And so right then and there, we find the problems, because with respect to the speed of energy transfer, we have to understand that there are relationships. And so the field relations have to accommodate for field strengths. And we can change from field to field, and we can transcend multiple energy states. And so we find that the Earth space is a kind of energy state. And it too has many different energy states. But fundamentally, it is gravitationally stable. It's a gravitationally stable energy state, and this is good for us. And it's doing this because it's bound to the ethos of the universe. So that's a good thing. And then we find that within our little Earth space here, and we say that seeing is believing. Do you know what you're seeing? Do you really know what you're seeing? Because there's a hole in my Gantz. What's in there? Stick your finger in there and find out. It's has to be something, doesn't it? Because this is a rotating feedback. And so this is a feeding byproduct of a feeding process. And where's that energy coming from? So I'm glad that you can see it, but do you believe it? Well, this is the problem. You're looking for outer space. Outer space is not a place. Outer space is a method of energy transfer. It's energy in motion. And so the rules are that the whole universe is a field. So if they come together, where did they come from? And so that's the charge, because energy is always in motion. So if you're always in motion, then there's all things in combination. And so we can conclude that not only are we able to exchange energy on the Earth space, but we're able to exchange energy with other spaces. Other spaces, other places, and it's all done by the same rules. And so we're looking at the emission and absorption of energy and how it affects the rotating field, the speed of the field, the strength, the direction. And so all of these are representations of a charge. And so these charges are given in the universe. And we say that two forces come together, but there's way more than two forces. It's more than one. And in fact, it's more than two, because 1 and 1 is more than 2. So, and one keeps coming and another one keeps coming. And is that one the same as the other one? And so there's always some kind of relation of some source to the individual you. And so we have figured out how to choose our planet, right? Because we were born. But how can you choose your planet if you can't even see your planet? So you have to see your planet somehow to choose your planet, right? It's like you go to a car dealership and say, I want to buy a car. Okay, here it is. No, well, I want to see it first. Oh, aren't you fussy? So anyway, uh, other people, you know, they like to choose for you. And when they choose, well, guess what? They choose in their self-interest, not yours. And so this is where we have a problem, a relation of some individual to the individual you. And so you have to choose. You have to choose which way you're going to do. Are you going to have the universal harvesting, which feeds your self-enhancement? Or are you going to do loose harvesting, which not only consumes others, but consumes yourself? And no one escapes this decision. Because these are all violations of universal moralities. And this is why when we have different points of view and you have a different vision, oh, is that a flash? Is that a glow? Is that a glitter? Or, can you smell the prophet? Well, now we have a situation where we're diminishing in our productivity. So we're forecasting that. Oh, so you're confident in losing. Or are you lacking confidence in creation? Or are you just lacking gravitational stability? And so you find that this decision-making process is accounting for something or discounting for, and you get to choose. And you get to choose. Well, it's either a blast or it's bountifulness, or maybe it's just a genetic defect, and so that choice may have been made for you. In all of these points of view, it's always about you, isn't it? So we find that this energy that is principal matter is converging together, and the forces of principal matter, transition matter, and convergence matter. And so there's a conversion. And where is that conversion? And so it needs a feedback. And that feedback, in our case, is our earth space. And so what we resolve here is a feedback interaction, which we call inertia. Because that's the combination of the two, isn't it? That's the combination of the man space field and the earth space field. So that's our, oh, wait a second, that's our experience. Well, wait a second. Do you believe your experience, or do you experience your belief? And did you know that you had the choice of doing both? And you have to decide which is which. So when we look at the core component of the energy, we find that it is the electron, because it's magnetical and it's like a PM tick. And so that is plasmatic. But the electron is also part of the atom. And so that would make it gravitational, but it's still a ray. But it could manifest into physicality. And so we have to decide if these PM ticks or these rays are plasmatic or physical. Well, first of all, they have to manifest, and then they have to make a decision, and not alone, in combination. So within their own existence, an atom has a relationship between the magnetical field of the electron and the magnetical field of the proton. and the larger proton feeds the electron. And so we see that there's a balance. But the picture says, that doesn't look very balanced to me. And so the point is that one field has to be bigger than the other. And so that gives us a direction of flow in the initial reaction. Higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So these are the fundamental processes of the attraction and repulsion of magnetical gravitational field forces. And so we could call them feeding and feedback. And so we find that there's a sequence turn on or turn off that feeding, or we can increase and decrease the strength of the field, or we can enhance or diminish the position of that field wherever it is. And so these are all skills that we need to learn. And the base of this comes from the different emotions of vision. Yeah, there are different emotions. We only seem to think of vision as eye vision. And so that's okay if you have all your faculties. And so we become eye dependent. And that's nothing wrong with that. But for the blind person, this is a real problem. And so they depend on ear visions and nose vision and mouth vision. And isn't it interesting that the horizontal people, such as, let's say, dogs, for instance, they really depend on nose vision. Their nose vision is 40,000 times stronger than man's nose vision. And then, of course, there's mouth vision. And, you know, we all remember that old commercial with that famous tuna fish. And he always wanted to be chosen. And so he was always become a snappy dresser. Sorry, buddy. It's not about good taste. It's about tasting good. And that becomes the feedback vision. In fact, all of these are the feedback vision, right? Because you're the one doing the vision. And so it involves your environment. That environment that you are suggesting is exclusively physical, which now we know it's not, because we have GANs, and then we have holes in our GANs, and we have these emotions. So is it all physical feedback? Or should we refer to as our feedback vision? Because let's put it this way. When we look at how these things are aligned, the crossover point is at our position of our soul. And so if we look at the soul positioning, we find that it is right at that crossover, right at the cross. At that point, we are feeding. And so the feeding vision goes out exactly the same way it came in. And so there's a plasmatic symbiosis that comes from this point at the crossroads, this point of this feeding vision. In fact, the feeding vision becomes a feeding division, and all work together. And for our purposes, it manifests into materialism. And is that true? Well, there are some people who talk about the third eye. And then we say, well, what is that? That is, you could say, the vision of the left eye and the vision of the right eye as a field force coming together and giving you that singular vision. And that's true, isn't it? Because if you're looking at something or somebody, you see that person or that thing in focus. You don't see what we call double vision. And so that third eye is the left vision and the right vision coming together. But some people think, well, it would really be good to drill a hole in the forehead to open the third eye. Well, truly, if we were supposed to have a hole in the head, we would have gotten one, because we certainly have a hole in our mouth. And we have holes in our ears. And so we find that the energy doesn't depend on physical barriers. The plasmatic symbiosis we see from the PM ticks or X-rays or gamma rays does not depend on the physicality of the body and affects us. So this is kind of a dumb thing to do, but the third eye is the combination of those fields. And we're going to talk about that more later, because we just have to understand that there are other energy forces coming together. And we know that because the Earth doesn't. And of course, it has to exchange energy, so it's emitting a lot of energy. And so whether it's emitting or whether it's coming out, the Earth is in a maggrav position. And so that maggrav position is the feeding dimension, which includes the feeding and the feedback. So if the Earth doesn't have a third eye, then, you know, we're not drilling because we want to give the Earth a third eye, are we? We're drilling for something else. And so we find that as far as plasma is concerned, it can leave a field, we call that emission, or it can be absorbed in a field, we call it absorption. And it can do this at light speed. And so if we were born and we couldn't see us coming, there's a problem there. Can't see the problem. And the thing is, in Atlantis, those stupid people, they knew about the codons of the DNA and the RNA before us smart people. And a long, long time ago. And we see the remnants all over the place. We don't see the people, we just see the remnants. Well, what do you believe? If seeing is believing, I guess you get to be selective of what you see. And so we have to understand that for some people, seeing is all what they believe, and they say, well, this is our scientific responsibility. And then there are all those people who say, believe and you will see. And do they know what they're talking about? Are they talking about one and the same thing? Well, something's missing. And so the plasma science is adding to the knowledge. And that's the rate of change. And so what's affecting that? And so that is the emotion point. That point of existence we call the transmutation. It is this balanced mag-graph which is at the emotion of position. How do we get there? And so that's what we're talking about today. At this point is the emotion of vision. And I guess you get to choose. Are you seeing what you're believing, or are you believing what you're seeing? And, you know, are you believing any words that you hear anyway? Or are we just making this whole thing up? Because we have a plasmatic reality and we have a physical reality. And we've seen that we can go in both directions. And we can exchange energy. Energy is a feeding pack. And is this feeding pack that is transcending the various reality dimensions, is this feeding pack the emotion of vision? Or is the emotion of vision one kind of energy feeding pack? Of elements, and these that we've been talking about in our basic series, and we find how important calcium is. But is calcium more important than any of these all here? If you could take one out of this table and sacrifice it, could you do that? We're looking at the cups of life, and we see that we've been able to produce the GANs, and we see that it's copper GANs, calcium GANs, zinc GANs, copper GANs, and then we find this amino acid GANs and the water GANs, and so, well, how can I get all of these different GANSes just from the basic cups of life? And then I put them all together, and I can get the stacker units or the universal cups. All of them have a magnetical field and a gravitational field, and each individually have a soul, and then collectively together they have a soul as well. And how does that happen? And is that, you know, something that's missing? So when we're saying that energy is in motion, and we find there's an interaction point, and so it comes and meets a field. So that emotion of vision, is it the point where it meets the field, or is it the energy that is coming to meet that point? Which part of the dynamic plasma interaction is the emotion of vision? Because it's certainly not physical. So we know that it can be part of the feedback loop, and it can also be part of the feeding loop. And that is not precise enough, because we still have the variable that, believe it or not, so that allows the materialization of the Earth space. And so this is a proven concept. So the idea of the two-way street is a novel concept. And the reason for it is because we're too selective. So when we look at the relationship between the sun and the earth, we find the sun has its gravitational stability, as does the earth, but they're not equal. So how do we find this path down this street of equality? So we're going to have to choose a different reference point, aren't we? It isn't physical. It has to do with energy conversion. And so when we look at these fields and how they interact and how they maintain their gravitational stability, and so this is one way that we can connect through this emotion of vision. But if we flip things around, this is another way that we can connect. You still have this gravitational stability. So the emotion of vision is contributing to the gravitational stability, isn't it? In fact, it becomes fundamental. It becomes fundamental to the bonding dimension, because when you have this plasmatic spectrum and this physical spectrum, there has to be this connection, this reality dimension which connects the two. But there has to be an energy transfer. And so if the plasmatic spectrum is non-physical, then the energy of transfer has to be non-physical. And can it manifest into the physical spectrum? The energy transfer has to be non-physical, but the manifestation may become materialization. It all depends on the emotional vision. So this is the dynamic plasma relationship between your inner space point and your inner space field and what you see around, because this is what we're transmitting, what's around. They're all in different places. They're not in the same place at the same time. In fact, they keep moving. So they're all at some point within the sun space field. And so there's energy that is being transmitted. And it is not selective by the sun. The sun doesn't select what it sees. The sun provides everything. And so we can clearly see that the planets are more selective in what they receive because all the planets are different. And this is an important factor because everyone on this planet is different. Everyone on this planet is unique, yet everyone on this planet is equal. So it's the environmental modification that we're looking at, which is affecting our emotional positioning. And so we want to see, is this predictable, or is it a violation of our mental space? Are we taking into account the correct emotional relationship? Or is it just our space versus some other space? And if our space is our inner space, so is that our inner space versus a physical space? And if it's not our inner space, maybe it's some other inner space versus some other physical space. Or are we discussing the difference between the inner space and the outer space? And is it always physical? Anyone planning a vacation? You're not there yet, but don't you have an emotional attachment? Isn't that the dynamic plasma connection, the reality dimension? You're feeding that. That's your feeding radiance. It's beyond your aura. It's that dynamic plasma interaction. And then you have this feedback radiance. Oh, I'm thinking about going on holidays to a beach somewhere. Well, that narrows it down, doesn't it? To every single coastline on this planet. So we need to get a feedback, don't we? And so that's how it works. And that's how we quantify our reality dimension. So it's our inner space spectrum, which is the feeding radiance. And then we get this feedback radiance, which enhances our inner space spectrum. So we send it out and it comes back. And so we can have a plasmatic manifestation, which is part of the feeding radiance. And then we can have this physical manifestation, which would be the feedback radiance. I want to go on holidays to this certain beach. Boom, you know, the trip is arranged and off you go. So congratulations. And so you could see this in your mind's eye. And it is at that point that you projected your vision. I want to go there. Well, that sets the target. And everyone has their own vision. But interesting enough, there are those who are clairvoyant. They can see more than the average person. They're able to see the aura. We all have an aura. And some can just see the aura, and others can also have the ability to interpret the aura. I can't do either one of those, but I can see the soul, because I don't listen to the words that someone says. I listen to their intent to see if they're lying. I listen with my ears to see if they're lying. And when I see that they're lying, then I have a problem. And that problem is that I want to be polite. I don't want to embarrass them more than they've already embarrassed themselves. But you have to ask the clairvoyant the question, which soul does the clairvoyant see? Does he see the soul of the cells? And yes, they do. Medical type clairvoyants can see. You know, they don't need an x-ray. They can see quite well the situation or the state of your health. And then they can see the color of your aura and they can determine whether you're lying. And since the soul of the cells and the soul of the body work like GANs, and we know that GANs has an emotional affinity, it becomes a natural lie detector and a love detector. This is well explained. But let's go to another place. Let's check out what we call the roof of the earth. Let's go to Tibet. They had something very special there. Very remote, very mysterious, so not Western, Far Eastern. They had lamas. What's a lama? Well, the head of the lamas is the Dalai Lama. And maybe it would be appropriate to show his picture here, except I can't stand looking at his face anymore. But these lamas are governing lamas because they have the ability to be clairvoyant. And so they can see the souls. And so that qualifies them to be a lama, but the Dalai Lama is intergenerational. And so the notion is that the Dalai Lama has an energy field that is carried forward. And so with the passing of a lama, the lamas all get together and search out the new Dalai Lama. And the qualification to be a new Dalai Lama is to remember the soul of the past Dalai Lama. And so I think the current one is the 13th generation that they have successfully linked up. And they really work very hard at this, and it sometimes it takes a couple of years because child has to grow. And so they are confident that he grows in Tibet. And so they scour the entire countryside. And when someone finds out that there's a possibility, and of course parents want their child to be the Dalai Lama, I mean, let's face it, you know, it's almost like a lottery, isn't it? I have the chosen one. And so they go there and they ask the questions that only a Lama could answer. And when they fail that test, they say, thank you very much, and off they go. But when they find the right one, they know it. And so they've been able to do that through 13 generations. And so these lamas run the main monastery. And they're not only governing lamas, but they're also teaching lamas. And some of the teaching lamas are what we call priests. And the highest level of these priests are what we call Shaolin priests. And so they have this vision. And then they have these monasteries. As a Westerner, I didn't know much about these monasteries. We know that there are monks, and we know that the monks are very religious. And as I studied these monasteries, I found that there were different types of monks. And to my amazement, I found out that many of them weren't religious at all. The monasteries were places of convenience. And so, not to go through the full list, let's just say there were industry monks, and there would be a specific monastery for that particular industry. Or there were just praying monks, monks who didn't do much, they just prayed. And then there were these medical monks who would be called into action to solve medical emergencies, and they were extremely knowledgeable. And of course, extremely knowledgeable, extremely skillful monks were Shaolin monks. And you can relate to the Shaolin monks to the Japanese noble samurai. But I was shocked to find out that there were these warrior monks. And you can relate to those as part of the noble samurai, as ninja assassins. So each monastery has its function. So this was new to me. But the monks themselves weren't, shall we say, very visionary. and say, well, beggars didn't have much vision. Well, unlike North American beggars, they do have a rule. They only beg from you once. Or let's put it another way, never beg from the same person twice. It's rude. So even roadside beggars have rules. And some of these beggars needed to take, but some need to allow others to give. In other words, if it wasn't for the beggars, the rich travelers would not be able to give for the sake of their soul. And so these beggars were well off because they knew they were providing a service. They weren't begging for money, they were providing a service. So those who knew the difference, they were okay, but others, they didn't know the difference and they needed to join a monastery to have a safe place to sleep and a safe place to stay. But when you join a monastery, it becomes almost like a slave state. And so you would join another group, highway bandits. They're not really beggars, are they? They don't ask for an offering. They just wait on the trails. They wait for you. And so traveling becomes a group affair. And you hope that group is well armed and of a size strong enough to fend off the highway bandits. What a great place to be. So we find that our soul is a beggar soul, isn't it? And that's the essential you. Did you know you're a beggar? Because you're interacting between this plasmagen state and the mattergen state. And you need to be that beggar because you have a surrogate body. The soul of the body, that's also you. But that's you with the interaction between the plasmagen state and the environmental matter state. And so when we talk, that's the here and now, because this is wherever you are is where you want to be. And so your position of vision is determined by that. You predicted what would happen, and then you got the feedback. And so that affected your position. But your emotion of position had to come from somewhere. And so that's the emotion of vision. And so we're starting to see that there are different layers of the emotional onion. Even the earth has a point of vision. And the peace dome, the cells of the souls, and the universal community all have their point of vision. And so what is their source of inspiration? And what is the source of your inspiration? And who? So here we are. Here we are on Earth. And so we see that the peace dome is a dynamic emotion of vision, along with the soul of the earth body. Has to be. You were born here. You weren't born on Mars. there has to be a merging of the two emotion of visions. And the earth has to have one as well. And so when we look at the emotion of peace, and we see how it affects the emotion of position, because when we look at the vertical people's dreamscape, we see that it's all well organized. There are no rockets around and there are no guns. And so we see that the universe is emotionally normal. The earth just seeks freedom and emancipation, where man can choose his existential adaptation and harvest the plasma emotional energy of the plasma universe, where we have this pursuit of happiness failure, because we have a failure of our vision. Man has never launched a rocket into outer space. And 100% of us came to Earth space safely. And we came here as opposed to Mars space. So we were able to guide our way through this emotion of position map, where we have this feeding radiance and this feedback radiance, which transcends the various reality dimensions. And the motivating force behind all this is the emotion of vision. Yeah, because the earth has a priority. So it's the soul of the solar system and the soul of the sun, which attracts the soul of the earth. Okay, so that has to come first. And then we have to attract the earth body. So the soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth can do that. Now that we have the earth body, okay, so now the soul of the earth body plus that soul of the man can attract the soul of the man's body. Oh, this is good. So now we have the two bodies. Great. Well, it would be ridiculous for us to manifest before the earth body, wouldn't it? So the sun body plus the soul of the earth body manifests the physicality of the earth, the materialization. And then here we go. It's our turn next. Now that we have the soul of the earth and the soul of the body, and we have this manifested physicality of the earth space, now we can have our man space. Thank you very much. And so we will be testing this with the flight test to Mars as well very soon, just to see what there is to see, I guess, because we're still exploring our own man space here, trying to figure out what's going on. And so we're starting to realize there's different energy states and there's different emotions. And so we have to take all this into account and understand that maybe there's something still missing, because when we look at the three plasma amigos, we only see the soul of the man, the soul of the body, and the soul of the cells. Wonder where the emotion of vision fits in. Because and so we have to target wherever you were born, there you were, bullseye. Still not accounted for. So we have lots to learn, as we see with the cups of life. Very simple, but very important, because they're fundamental to our emotional strength. And that is transferred with the emotion of vision, because we're inherently peaceful. And so our earth space landscape is heaven, and our man space dreamscape is peace. This is where science meets the soul of man for peace. And we're in the post-December era. We're looking for that graceful, sweet space. And on March 24th, it'll be time for the world leaders to be introduced to the true power of the emotion of vision. This is the Kesh. Have already made in the dreamscape. There's the World Peace Treaty. Sign it. Sign it with your pen. Sign it with your heart. The emotion of vision allows fields of life choices free from boundaries or abuse. And the emotion of position map is your travel guide. We're looking for this gravitational transformation through the earthbound enhancement of our physical and emotional vitality. And we can achieve this through the transmutation connection of that transparency point and the manifestation point. So adaptation and awareness is an inner space emotional construct and connects equally to the universal broadcast of the inner space of freedom. The emotion of vision is perfect, along with universal morality. Choose wisely and dare to dream. The plasma science needs to continue to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. So welcome to the outer space age. That's the end of the lesson. Thank you, gang. I hope you enjoyed the trip.
Thank you, Alex. But there was definitely something interfering with your transmission. When you listen to the recording, I think you'll hear it, but it was only a few words here and there, so I don't think it's too much, but it's never happened before. I don't know what was interfering with that. Maybe you set up something new. It did seem like it was your system, but I'm not sure. And I didn't want to interfere with it because it only was a couple of words here and there. But at least 10 times, I think we lost a couple words of what you were saying.
Yeah, there's lots of reasons for it. And interestingly enough, we had a Zoom upgrade again today. So it was working very, very well before. But one of the things, of course, is that the usage of the air, shall we say, the airwaves is increasing all the time. And so, you know, it's really becoming an integral part of our lives. And so the demand on the airwaves, on the bandwidth is high.
Well, hopefully with the new head units, we'll take some of that pressure off as more and more people start to use them. And for communication, for travel,
But I hope everyone got the gist of the meeting, because that's what's important, and we'll find out what the questions.
Right. So I don't see anyone. Usually I ask, is anyone here for the first time? But I think everyone's been here before. They're seasoned knowledge seekers, so to speak. And when you said there's a need to allow others to give, this is what Mr. Kesh said we'll be doing with the world leaders. It's not that we're elevating them. They've already been elevated. We have to allow them to give. And then I was thinking about the formation of the Universal Council, or maybe it was in the process of creation video, where when a soul can't give, it's not in a good position. So I know they take a lot, way more than they give. I mean, they do give orders and things, but it doesn't seem like they have a lot of ability to give from their soul. And then you have to become part of someone else's universe, or a dust or a speck of dust in that universe, until you learn more, until you're able to give. So there's something, and perhaps we'll get instructions on that date before we actually interact with the soul of the world leaders and maybe some religious leaders too, but there's something about this giving. The soul is not correct. It cannot give. And so maybe they'll start to give more from their soul. I don't know. It was just a thought that I had. But he said we need to take what they're giving. And I'm not sure exactly what that means as well.
Well, Mark, you really actually hit on a very important point. You know, your answer is, oh, well, that was just a thought. See, that's where the problem is right there. Just a thought is pretty significant. Okay, because the way you say it, it's just like, you know, I'm looking for something that's significant, but that was just a thought. Well, the thought is significant, you see, because the thought is part of the emotional vision. And where those who are having problems with, you know, seeing as believing, they can't even align themselves on what they see. Because if you're only looking at what you're receiving and you're not looking at what you can give to, this is where it causes the problem. So say, for instance, oh, it's raining today. What a depressing day. Would a farmer say that? I don't think so. I think a farmer would say, oh, what a great day for the crop. Right? So the relationship that he has with respect to his seeing is believing is in relationship to others. So if he has that relationship to others, that is not a physical relationship. That is an emotional relationship. This is a key point.
Okay. Let's see if others have something they'd like to. And again, this is the University of the Universe. We can talk back to the teacher without, and we invite you to take part in the discussion. That's why we're all here. But of course, there is a quiet line of communication. You don't have to interact, and we're not forcing you to interact. And you are interacting on the soul level, I'm sure. All of our souls here are interacting. When you talked about the daydream, Alex, and then the night dream, is there a big difference? I'm thinking, I don't think so. I mean, the daydream vision, maybe you're just sitting on the park bench and all of a sudden you go somewhere else and remember the picnic you had a couple weeks ago or a reunion or something along that line, and you're interacting with it. It's the same C14, it seems to me, but this time you're really conscious. And normally they don't last that long, the daydream. And I'm thinking maybe the night dream doesn't last that long either. It may be just seconds, even though it would seem like it stretched out, you know, half of the night. And maybe that's why we only remember a small bit of it, because it's not really that big. But the daydream and the night dream, to me, you're not conscious, okay, at night, but in the day you are. So I think you're experiencing the exact same things. You're in two places at the same time with the daydream.
See, this is another important point. I think you're 100% correct in that observation, because I had no way of making a determination, but I think now we figured out that that is a very fleeting moment, and that also it becomes very important to remember that, especially within 35 to 45 seconds after you wake up. If you don't have that opportunity to shall we say, engrave that memory in your memory bank, then it'll be just as fleeting. It'll just disappear. So what are you doing the rest of the time? So that would imply that the rest of the time is something different.
Well, you can have multiple daydreams in a day.
Well, yeah,
again,
exactly.
just a
But
fleeting, and it's real. I mean, it senses, you know, you went to the baseball game or the soccer, football, and you were there for briefly, but it seems like you were reenacting or enacting that experience again in so many ways, and real, as I see it.
yeah, for sure. And interestingly, what you just said, that could be in the past or that could be in the future.
So, right, we're just really don't even understand the full capabilities of our soul, probably quite far from it at this point. But step by step, we're becoming more familiar with its capabilities. Some of them, anyway.
Well, we can tell by the quality of the questions that you're asking, Mark, because you seem to form your question with an answer. You're getting very good, very good. That's a compliment, okay?
Well, I don't want to make too many assumptions, as we see with this E equals MC squared. Apparently,
Oh, who cares?
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
I know there were a lot of assumptions made, and we can't do this in the universe. Otherwise, we're going to end up in the wrong place, in the wrong position, and maybe kind of lost in a way. We seem to, Mr. Kess seems to stress, we're going to have to know this sort of backward and forward. This is not something you're going to take on lightly, because it could have some effects that your soul could even dissolve, I think. So this is not a light approach where, you know, willy-nilly walking down the garden path and being in the whatever zone, but then the muggers come out, you know. So I think we're testing it again, and I'm sure we're tethered, but you're going to have to, I think, kind of know pretty much what you're doing, or you could probably get lost in a way.
you have to be skillful.
And it's going to take some training and some practice and some experience. But once we have it, well, maybe not. There'll always be new interactions to experience and to learn from, perhaps. But yes, it's a whole new infinite world of emotions, experiences that we're becoming aware that we can interact more with. Someone else would like to bring something up, perhaps, or make a comment, or bring an apple for the teacher, perhaps.
Hi, Mark. It's Dean here. May I make a comment?
Of course.
I did.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for a beautiful teaching again. Thank you, Mark, for everything you're doing. So, Alex, a question would be: this communication we're having right now. So we're on a channel, Zoom channel, and zero time communication. The time spent between my voice and when it reaches you, there's a space gap. And I've noticed in many instances within media that we are living in the past. Most of the information we receive is from the past. We're never in the present moment. You know, that there's a lot of juggling that goes on with media where you receive it, or governments will give out information and things. It's always a long time down the line. So it's never in the present moment. So this would be this situation where you would, you know, and it may be, you know, like as I'm speaking now, it may seem very close, but the space gap in, let's say, in a specific time, place, and position might be an eternity away. You might have missed the point of interaction by, you know, a universe. So, and that's because it's in the matter state. So the only way you're going to be able to actually create this condition to actually be present in the moment is to be in the moment, and that is on a thought process. It can never be in the matter state condition of sending it down a telephone line or any communication that would involve the matter state. That's just a thought.
No, it's an important thought, Dean. Thank you, because for the members on this panel, so this is in the moment. But what about those who aren't here?
Exactly, they're going to be listening to a recording, so that's a very big space gap. Mr. Kess works on this principle all the time. We all go into the teachings and we go back and relearn something, we experience something again, and then move forward. So we're transitioning between two points, and I suppose this is part of it. It's that if there's no time, space, and position, if there's no time, then I suppose we can go back. We can speak in the moment, we can experience something, and then gather that memory, and then come forward into outside of this earth space, and then we're present again, and then receive to be able to move forward once more, I suppose, if that's the right way of saying it.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah,
there's many ways to say this.
There's many ways, but you're making a valid point.
And wouldn't
I think it's the way that I think it's the way that what I'm trying to get across is when it's like when people go into, I've noticed because I've been doing a lot of social media lately, and you're reading posts and you're flicking down, and but most of these things are the past pretense, and informations you're receiving are all in the past. Even the things that are live, there's still still a time delay in the matter state, so it's still not present moment unless you're doing like the meditations and the connections you're doing every at 9 p.m. the UC are doing, and others. That's the only time you're getting true how do you describe it, field strength waveform, where you're direct connected to everything in the creator. Other than that, you're in a different time space, it seems.
Wouldn't you think there are more entities here than we're seeing in the participants list?
Most definitely, Mark. Yeah,
most definitely, right? Because if a soul wants to be here, we wouldn't actually physically see them. They wouldn't have to log in, but they're here somehow in the energy dimension, participating in so many ways. Maybe even interacting with your soul, Alex's soul, everyone's soul here. They have their own sort of secret life, let's say, even though it's being opened up. But there's many more things going on the energy level, I would say, than we can see with our physical participants list. Most
definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
So we have the evidence of that possibility. We just don't have the evidence of that confirmation. But it stands to reason because we're part of the whole thing there. So the main purpose of even putting forward a class like this is that we understand that there is that possibility. Because if everything that we decide on has to be physical,
right,
and we can't even agree when we're seeing is believing on what we're seeing, then that whole argument breaks down. And then we have to take other things into account. And why aren't we taking into those things into account? All right. So have we asked ourselves that? And I can tell you, before the age of 40, I never asked myself that. What I did ask was, why are we having these problems? And why do I go to a professor and he says, I don't know? Well, if you don't know, then I am like, I'm in doo-doo. I'm in doo-doo land, because who do I turn to? If the professors don't know, who do you turn to for the answers? Well, obviously the church is always there. Well, we'll give you the answers. Well, I got cured of that at a very early age. So it's just, you know, you have to go to a reliable source, a verifiable source, and you find that, oh, you're the source. You're the one who knows. You know, and doesn't matter what you experience. Someone can always come up to you and say, "Oh, do you know what you're talking about?" You know, and you know, you have to tell them, "I know what I'm talking about, but you don't know what I'm talking about, and that's not my problem. That's your problem." So, and you have to go that way. But I used to always be concerned, you know, say, "Well, you know, did I do something, you know, less than good enough if they don't understand?" So what I have to do is explain it in a way that they understand. So I don't have to explain it the way I want to explain it. The way I want to explain it, on one hand, is, in my opinion, the proper way, but I have to explain it in such a way that it's effective. And so we come up with these chariots of fire, you know, and so they would say, I get it. It's like a wagon, you know, with a flame out the back. Okay, so the flame is what gives it the thrust. And then we look at it and say, oh, so in historically, they've seen rocket ships. Oh, gee, I thought that was just a modern invention when they invented gunpowder. And then you say, oh, well, these people in the past were stupid, and we're the smart ones. Well, we ain't so smart if we can't see how smart they were. And so you have to be like Sherlock Holmes and decipher things and say, oh, okay, chariot of fire. Oh, that means there were rockets back then. Okay, well, how come there were rockets, then there are no rockets, and now there's rockets? There's a gap in between. What happened? You know, who dropped the ball? And, you know, and where did they go? Well, they went up in the sky somewhere. Oh, yeah? Well, like where? And, you know, are we asking the same questions today? You know, we have these orbs in the sky and we see them and we can't explain them. Well, yeah, we can explain them now. They're gravitationally stable. And if they're gravitationally stable, then we're not seeing that gravitational field. What we see in the physicality is the gravitational field. So the reason we can't see the plasma field is because it's magnetical.
We're very privileged to begin to understand that we actually are operating in both the energy and the physicality. I mean,
Bingo.
Mr. Kesh has been very patient with us, but he's always tried to get us to see this energy state, which you physically can't see in a way, but you're operating within it. So this is just the beginning point of our understanding of the schizophrenic ability we have, let's say, or this chameleon type of ability, because most people have not opened this up yet for themselves. They don't, it's all physical, and he's always told us we're so physical, but we're starting to move away a little bit from it and more into this energy dimension, which is foreign to us. So again, I wouldn't belittle anybody who doesn't quite understand it yet, because we were all there, as Alex said, up to age 40 or whatever, no concept of it, right?
Mark, do you think,
Well,
sorry, Alex, can I quickly just say something?
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, please. Yes.
Can I just quickly say something? So remember Mr. Kess spoke recently and touched on that, in fact, the last workshop, that we would, you know, when you die, you leave your bones here. So that, you know, this element of the carbon 14 going into the carbon 12 and being present, you know, this interaction, but you leave your skeletal mass, which is connected to this calcium, which we have in every part of us. and we leave this structure behind on the planet. But my question would be, there has been, again, just going into the past, there has suddenly been civilizations that just disappeared. And they've not even left any bones behind. So how does that equate, do you think?
Well, didn't he teach us a number of workshops ago that we cannot litter, that you have to take everything with you? Otherwise, we're just going to be littering the way people do in the park as you go around the universe.
Yeah.
So he said that you have to take it all in a way. You can't be littering. So again, we don't understand the totality. That's why, I think. But he did mention that about littering and leaving parts of ourselves in different parts of the universe. That was not acceptable, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you. That sort of explains that a bit.
And there are communities right now, I think these island people or something, they just disappear. I think the ones you're referring to, Dean, is the down in the south, you know, where they became a culture of death, similar to what the United States has become.
The Mayans?
Yeah. Mr. Kesh gave that teaching. And I thought he said they were removed for that reason. And he said if we could do it there, we could do it further up north.
This is a big open door now, big topic, because we know the technology and we know that the abilities of this, yet the ethos says not to touch. However, when a soul is creating conditions for others that is so intolerable on a soul level and a soul physicality, then there always has to be a balanced position, and that will maybe a position that their own souls take to you know, when they reach a certain position, that all of a sudden, you know, this Magrav positioning takes place.
And no souls are lost. Mr. Kesh said there's no souls are lost. And it's not the threat of killing, it's the threat of the enforcement of peace on this planet. That was a few years ago when he brought this topic up in one of the Knowledge Seekers workshops.
There is there is much that has possibilities, could go either way, and if there's infinite possibilities, then there's infinite amount of ways to achieve a certain position that brings about this balanced position for all.
And I was thinking about the elevation of the soul of this planet, Dean or Alex or anyone else, where the soul is inside the physicality of the planet, just like our soul is inside our physicality. If we give it enough energy, the soul could expand, couldn't it, of this planet, and then encompass its own physicality? I was just thinking about that and what sort of conditions that would create. Would it move the entire physical planet to another position? Would that actually ever happen? But isn't this the idea, to elevate the soul of this planet? So,
Mark,
yeah.
Go
ahead, Alex. No, you go, Alex.
We're all so polite. I don't think you want the planet to dematerialize.
I'm not saying dematerialize. I'm saying encompass its physicality with its soul. The same what we're doing, right?
No, the planet's doing just fine. We're the problem.
I thought the soul of this planet was stealing from its own citizens because it was short. Which causes us to kill and eat other entities. It's taking the energy that, again, I'm just surmising, but I was just wondering, if we're elevating the soul of this planet, is it just going to feel balanced and stay in its position, or is it going to do a similar thing of encompassing its own physicality?
Mark, so can I answer that? So if this is so,
I'm not
if
saying
we
it's so, Dean. I'm just surmising a possibility.
possibility, yeah, I understand. If so if I was to expand my soul, or any of you expanded your soul, and then it goes into what do you want to expand it to circumnavigate your body? Do you want to encompass other souls? Do you want to encompass the planet? Do you want to expand your soul so it covers the planet? So with all the souls within it become one soul, and then it becomes one unit, one universal unit that is part of a much bigger universal condition. So it's all souls within souls becoming part of a one bigger picture. So it really depends on your viewpoint and your emotion and what you are trying to achieve. It's the same with any plasma. A plasma, you know, as we know, can be from an atom to a universe. So it's within your beauty to be able to have a thought, have an interaction that is from one point to the whole point of totality. So once one actually expands the soul and the others accommodate, allow, and interact with the soul, saying, yes, you've reached a certain position that we now allow you to become part of it. It's like us as souls, part of the planet Earth. That the soul of the planet has accepted us as souls and encompasses us in physicality. So it's the same sort of process. The same with, we go into the electron and protons and neutrons, the same sort of thing. But you get this one little guy that stands out, as Mr. Kess would say, on the side, and that interaction feeds all the others. So it's dependent upon your viewpoint and your what you're trying to elevate and to achieve, with the emotion of understanding of your creation that you've gone through your experiences in your physical lifetime. But then let's take it apart from the physical. Let's then go for the experiences you've experienced as a soul, depending upon when the soul was formed, and then how does that interact in both dimensions in this precise moment, or any moment.
No, well, what I was thinking, Dean, is if you go back into the private student archives, you can hear where Mr. Kesh was talking about the solar system being pulled back into the sun, and that we only had so much time again, and things can change, of course. And he said this goes on in the universe on a pretty regular basis, where the star created its solar system, and then in a moment of time, it pulls everything back into itself. That doesn't mean the star is gone, but its creation is pulled back into itself. Now, what if the soul of this planet was able to expand and encompass the physicality of this planet? And if that event was going to take place, it could actually move its position into another place in the universe to protect its creation. Let's just say, just surmising, could this be the reason for the elevation of the soul of this planet?
Yeah, most definitely, Mark.
Because if you can do it, why couldn't the planet do it?
Exactly. Everything, all souls have the ability to do this as a soul. So this soul, we see the planet. However, through the understanding,
it sounds outrageous, but
no, it does sound outrageous to people who've not, been part of. When you start to understand that you are a soul and you can take another position and create, within your structure other structures, then once you leave your physical body as a manifestation of a human being, and then you can become something else. For unless you've experienced this through the foundation, these, and some theologists and other things touch on this, but many, it's not something, it's not a viewpoint that they would even consider, because like today, I went into a position where I went out and interacted, and you just come up against other souls in physicality that are locked into a certain position in the physical body, and they only interact with their thoughts and intentions within that structure, and nothing else ventures out of that. There's no flexibility, if that's the right word. There's no field strength to be able to want to accommodate for anything else outside of what they're experiencing in the physical body in these moments. And so that is where the elevation of the soul has, needs to, or when they accept, when they're ready, for them to be able to open up to the possibilities that you have just spoken about.
Yeah, and I could be way off in left field with this thought, but I know he said that when the solar system gets pulled into the sun, very common occurrence every week or whatever in the universe, no one would feel a thing. It's almost like when you bring the vacuum close to a piece of dust and it just goes and you don't see it anymore and it's gone. This is the retraction of the creation of the star back into itself. And so maybe this is part of what we're doing with elevating the soul of this planet, not only into a peaceful position, but also allowing it to perhaps change positions. Again, this is just something I was thinking about.
And that position, Mark, that would be in the
soul
in the way
determine.
that then you would see different dimensions. Then you would start to see and interact in different positions, where it wouldn't just be the physical matter you see now as you sense and feel things now. It would be in another way, in another shape and form, which is like everything that we speak about with Mr. Kes says, if you go to another place, Zeus or wherever, you might have 20 arms, 20 legs. But again, that's physical. But so it's going into the dimension of an energy state, which could be from a gas to a liquid, solid, and all the other things. And just another dimension of understanding.
I was just dreaming. That's all.
It's just dreaming. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that conscious thought, that emotion that triggers off the matter state. Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll hear from someone else.
Yeah.
Dean, or please continue if you'd like.
No, let's let somebody else come in. It'd be nice to hear somebody else speaking as well.
And Alex, again, if someone wants to come in, please open your mic and come in. The Dalai Lama, is that the Buddhist head of one of the for Buddhism?
They're closer related to Taoism.
Okay. Because I know they were trying to split China, create Tibet or something. I don't know if the Dalai Lama's in Tibet or whatever, but they were part of this splitting, trying to make 2 or 3 Chinas out of China, which we are for one China, not multiple Chinas. But certain people do want to split up China, and I'm against that myself. We need one China, not 3 or 4. And I thought that perhaps they were part of this splitting off or trying to break off a piece of China, which the Chinese, I don't think, are going to allow that to happen.
Well, I originally got into that story because of the dynamic spirit, the indomitable spirit of man, and how they can survive at what they call the roof of the earth, because it's obviously very cold and barren. And you know, I always thought, well, that would be a nice country to visit, except it's extremely dangerous. It would be only good to go to the capital, but things have changed since then, and so as I explored the history more, then I found out, just like Dean said, you know, we're in the past tense there, and so what was at one time a wonderful place, you know, had become, you know, quite ordinary. So there was a lot of mystery that's obviously surrounds that, because it's different from any other community in the world, and so it was interesting to see how that they would coexist, organize themselves, and it was a nice study until I, you know, dug down deeper, and I was really shocked, and I don't want to say too much. I just
Okay. Yeah.
no, I'll let you do your own research on it. I just uh, you know, something that you don't know, you have the option of either what do you call it, criticizing it, or having deference for it, you know, having a respect for it.
Or ignoring
And
it.
so, well, that option also, but I mean, if you did have to engage in it, you know, so, and I chose the respect type of thing, and because, you know, until proven otherwise, and then when it was proven otherwise, then I said, oh my God, you know, see, the interesting thing, of course, was how they picked the Dalai Lama. And so this had to do with this vision, this clairvoyance, and you know, the whole process. And I was intrigued to see the stories. And this was recounted by one of the lamas, and his name was Lobsang Rampa. And actually, his proper name is Tuesday Lobsang Rampa. And anyway, he was quite a good writer, a lot of humor. But the thing is that, you know, he was very down to earth, and he said, well, how can a llama be down to earth? And yeah, he was very down to earth because, you know, he he didn't see the llamas as being, well, let's put it this way. In the ancient times, you had the druids and the priests, you know, and the shamans, and it's all the same thing. The llamas are the same thing. So, you know, you hold them in high respect, but then they lord over you. And so I never looked at them as lordly creatures, but, you know, they looked at themselves that way. And so, being one of them, you know, he could point out the more grounded point of view. Okay, so he could not diminish them, but, you know, you can criticize yourself, and he was in a position to do that. I wasn't in a position to do that, so it's interesting to see that perspective, and it brought a sense of realism to it. But it was never explained to me, you know, how that could go, because I always had this problem with reincarnation. And this becomes an incredibly important point, because the religion in India and the social structure is based on this reincarnation principle. So, and it is so well entrenched because it is the foundation of the caste system. So the basis of the caste system, you know, like someone has to figure out, well, you know, how do you know that you're a Brahmin, or how do you know that you're untouchable? So untouchable is, you know, you don't even want a 10-foot pole. Okay, you just 20-foot pole. It's just untouchable. So how do you determine that? And so that becomes the basis of the question. So when you look at the caste system, it's justified based on your reincarnation. And so if you were a good boy in the previous life, well, you were a Brahmin, and then if you were a bad boy, well, you became an untouchable. So in that way, everybody was reincarnated. And this is an Eastern philosophy, which is totally alien to me, being a Canadian. So it was a fascinating read, but I wanted to get it explained. And then I find out that it's, another ruse. That's what it is. It's another excuse on excusing our delinquencies, our misconduct, and saying so our misconduct is justified. So in the caste system, so I'm superior and I'm justified to be superior. So therefore, oh yeah, all of us are reincarnated equally, except that I'm more equal than you. Well, there's the flaw right there. And then when you find out, wait a second, what is this man involved with? And when I seen that, I was really, I mean, they're all the same.
Yeah,
There is no difference.
it's the same kingship, right? Whether it's the popes, the rabbis, the ayatollahs, or the Buddhists.
It's all the same. Yeah, and they all make their money the same way, and it's disgusting. But that's my opinion. And
I was just thinking, anyway.
well,
No.
we are going to change that because we are going to change their emotion of vision, and they have no choice in that matter because we're elevating to a higher energy state, you see. And so the difference, and this is the key point, and I just want to take another minute here, Mark, please, is the difference between the physicality and the plasma reality. This point has to be able to be communicated to the average person right off the bat. Okay, I love you. That's plasmatic. Good. Boom. Done. Okay. I see an aura. Yeah. What color is it? Oh, it's red. Boom. It's physical. Wait a second. It's a non-visible aura to most people, but if it has a color, so it's part of the soul of the body. So now you have the skill to differentiate. You must differentiate because what we are going to be doing, and what Dean has already talked about, that there's this problem, and I mentioned it earlier as well. We talked about the elevation of the Earth. The Earth is doing fine. The Earth has, in fact, asked for our assistance because there is a problem and we have the skills to do that. However, as you said, and I'm sure you didn't miss any. You said we have over 5,000 wars in the last 3,000 years, but
Yeah, that was from Mr. Kesh. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, maybe we need 5,001. Well, I mean, with every passing war, I think the need to have one is diminishing because, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results, you're an idiot. And, I'm sorry, but, it's not an insulting term because ignorant people cannot be insulted. So don't worry about it. We have to elevate them to the point where they start to realize the error of their ways and how it's affecting everybody. And that comes to the most important point. If you want to, say, have the Earth change its position, it will affect every other position in the solar system. So the Earth is rotating quite nicely and is following an orbit of rotation quite nicely, and it's being very considerate and very respectful of its neighbors.
And even a mosquito, if you swat and kill a mosquito, the whole universe has to recalculate itself, as I understand it. So it's not only the planet changing positions, it's even a small soul like a mosquito.
Yeah, exactly. So what we have to do is change the nature of the energy exchange. And so it can't be based on electricity. So if you say electricity, boom, that's physical. Even if you say proton, boom, that's physical.
Yeah. No.
Okay, so all of us on this panel are now developing this skill. The question is, how do we explain it to others? And you see, everybody has a struggle with it because we want to relate it to something that we know. Well, if you read the history books, it's, okay, I've got it. They used to have chariots of fire, and then you go to your neighbor, and you meet someone in a coffee shop. Oh, listen, friend, you know, can I tell you the story about the chariots of fire? Oh my God. It was, now you've totally lost the audience,
Mhm.
So you don't want to recap, how should we say, relive that history. The purpose of learning her history is so to correct the mistakes, and you have the wisdom to foresee that. And if you're going to foresee that, that's the emotion of vision. And so you now participate and activate the emotion of vision, and you respond to it accordingly. And that's how you navigate. And this becomes a really important fundamental function of how to fulfill a transmutation process. Because in order for you to go anywhere, and as we did in the December the 16th, when Mr. Cash asked people to go here or go there or whatever, they all went to that same spot, even though the names were different. But then when he asked them to look at what they wanted individually, it was helter-skelter all over the place. And so why is that? Because they've flipped over the pole. Instead of the giving, they're doing the taking. So now here's the catch. Here's the catch. Can we take on behalf of the benefit of others? So the beggar, the street beggar in Tibet, and I'm talking about I don't know about today. I'm just talking about the old times. They would say, okay, I will take, but in the process of taking, you will gain the benefit. And so how can you gain the benefit? Well, because the money that you give me was probably derived from some kind of theft. And so this is the appeasement of that person's conscience. This is an assistance in the appeasement of that person's conscience.
Was that Dean smiling?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, very beautifully put. Yeah, wonderful. One thing I'd like to say, Alex, is this picture on the screen now. So that soul positioning, that sparks a lot of interactions. That's if you take away the as you've done, you can see the structure of part of the soul in a position with all the other souls present as the stars and the galaxies. So if we take a position where we to enlighten, to be able to, for the physicality of the human race to understand some of this, the memory of the interactions that are happening now would be a beauty if the soul of the UC, of the universal community, would place a seed of another position that has taken a position of peace, and to show humanity as a memory, as a smell, as a position, how this interaction, how it feels to be in this position. Because mankind being very physical, if it experiences it, or in any of its interactions, it may trigger an emotion that will cause the peace to be present in the moment. If I've explained that very well.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. Congratulations.
Yeah, so when we can do this ourselves, so we're in the process of experiencing this by taking our soul and expanding it. But so once we expand that soul to, as I spoke about earlier, to encompass the other souls, and we become part of this soul, then the universal soul can take a position to bring this memory, this experience, this feel strength of whether it's a physical interaction so that humanity understands it or senses it, it can bring it forward. And I think this is maybe this is just my my me speaking here. However, I sense this may be a way to and I'm sure it's in process right now. I'm sure this is part of what we're experiencing. It seems traumatic and dramatic at the moment with with everything that's going on.
It is traumatic.
It's traumatic, yeah, for many, and this needs to be balanced out now. And so this is, when do we reach a position where all this nonsense gets to a fever pitch where it consumes itself and it turns back into the beauty? Because it has to be that position where it flips. All plasma flips. It all changes position, and that maybe is when as we described earlier, is when the physicality departs, and this can be a whole civilization that suddenly goes, and then it takes another position. As you said, the planet is fine. She's doing fine. She is supplying an environment for us to be present in.
Yeah.
And so it's, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. So I'll tell you exactly when that happens. When you go to the coffee shop and you stand in line and someone turns around to you and says, "Hey, Dean, what's going on here? I don't understand why." And so we know that why is the answer. It's not a question. So if they know why, if they're asking why, that means they noticed. And that's what it takes. And once one notices, then it's just a matter of time. The field has to, one by one, get stronger and stronger. But the rate of change increases by orders of magnitude. You see, so 1 becomes 10, 10 becomes 100, hundreds of 1,000. And next thing you know, the dominoes are falling in every direction. And the more dominoes that fall, the faster they go. And the faster they go, the more dominoes fall. And it's just a building up of a field strength. And until we realize that, there may be 1,000 out there who are making life miserable. But what they fail to realize is they're making life miserable for us as well. For themselves as well. I'm sorry, they know very well they're making miserable for us. But the thing is that they are missing the greatest most golden opportunity that they have, because they have created a system that if suddenly, instead of that giant sucking sound of sucking the financial strength out of every man, woman, and child on this planet, if they suddenly decided, geez, that's an awful lot of money to spend on killing people, why don't we, try and make this place a little bit better and see what happens, and then see the reaction, and then why do we do this sooner? And that'll be the reaction. So we now have the technology to elevate the soul, or elevate the energy engagement of the souls. So we're changing the playing field. We can't meet them militarily. We can't meet them financially, but they can't beat us on the soul level.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Alex, 100%. That it doesn't matter what positions that they ascertain. It's like Mr. Kesh with he could be the richest man on the planet, could have everything. Decides, chooses to take a position of creating a condition where it gives back to the totality of humanity and all the created creatures. So that's a deep understanding of creation, and that aspect of being able to understand that. And if you're in a position of so say power, then you have a certain way of viewing something, and and you move in certain circles of influence and positions that you hear certain things that others may not experience. However, you become very aware of your interactions with your own thoughts and intentions directed towards a greater mass of other physical souls. And you have a responsibility. And on a soul level, you are going to create a condition where, as you've said, Alex, you're going to be a speck of dust. So for the sake of a time scale that is in an eternal position, which they have a soul that's eternal, then it's a ridiculous mismatch of contradictions, especially when you have the ability to understand. If you just stand still for a second and realize what the conditions you're creating, and then listen to your own inner guidance, the soul aspect that speaks to you in a second, and and then you stop taking, you become a giver, and you can change it in an instant and change your whole aspect of your whole being and your whole existence as a soul. And the choice is yours in this moment. Thank you, Alex. Anyway, I just need to steam off there a little bit. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I'm voting for you in the next election. Yes. If you look at the role of a beggar, and one of the problems in Tibet, as again, I'm going back to its history, you didn't have much choice. You either became a highway bandit, or you were born as a lama. So only a few were born as a lama, the rest were born as monks, and monks lived in monasteries and beggars lived on the street, and it was the same thing. So, and then you have the regular public, like you have in every society, who tries to make ends meet, but of course you have landowners, and they look after the land and allow you to live in that community, and it's their responsibility to they're like the senators, they get together and they report to the lamas. So you have this hierarchy, okay, but you can't go anywhere. You everything is controlled, and especially if you're a woman, and so you that became a very dangerous thing. So I don't know how things have changed today, but the things are changing everywhere. So it really doesn't matter. What matters here is that we have an important mission, and be nice to entertain ourselves with this history, and it's nice to entertain ourselves on the internet and listen to vloggers and vloggers copying other bloggers. In the absence of a solution, this world is a depressing place. We are offering a solution. So the sun is shining on a rainy day, and the plants are going to grow and the people are going to grow as a result of it. So we need to focus is on the solution and not on the problem. So that's why these people are unimaginable. We need to look at the plasma science and how it works. And since it's of a higher power than the lowest power of the physicality, any smart businessman is going to make a decision to empower his company. And we are the company. And so our earth is our responsibility. So we want to empower ourselves to look after the earth. And the moment you say that, you now enlist the services of the universal forces. Okay, because then you become a beggar on behalf of.
Alex, it is what I find so beautiful is the knowledge, is the capability of anyone to pick up the intention, and it doesn't matter your position. It's the beauty of being peaceful, and that beauty within you expands out and touches others. So it's a field strength, it's an interaction. And that the beauty of that means that it takes away this strength of the imaginary position of I dominate you or whatever. When you become peaceful inside yourself and you give that to another, you have a totally different interaction. And this field strength, it's like the picture you had where the brain was in position. So the planet Earth, it could be for me like, you know, when you see spaceships that suddenly change position very quickly. They come down, they have this magnetic field, and then they lock into another position and they're gone. So the Earth could take this position in the galaxy, that it suddenly changes position very dramatically. And then we're in a different field strength completely, where this animosity and all these thoughts cannot take place. So there's more to this than can be just mankind's ignorance to the beauty of everything. And this for me, this is where certain positions, time, place, and position, and certain civilizations have acted in a certain way. And it depends upon, you know, like when we have GANs, and you have a certain GANs that makes a certain field strength, depending upon the emotions and, you know, the twists and turns and the elements you've put together. And it completely changes its characteristics and its field strength of giving, depending upon what's been transmitted into it. So it's all about positioning. So for me, that aspect of the brain being in a position in a universe, and this universe is in motion and it is constantly expanding. So the creation is constantly expanding. Then it's taken a new position, and I sense that we are, as a race, as however you want to describe it, as humanity, as species, as souls, we are. There's a condition being made in a time, place, and position where the understanding of the soul has reached a certain position where it is it has, in this moment, it has actually encompassed itself. It's expanded out and reached another field strength. So it's filtering its thoughts and intentions through another atmospheric condition, if you want to stay in the matter state, and it's finding another position. And this is the peace. This is the universal condition of balance, and whether it's in the physical body or whether it's in the mental state, or the, you know, not the mental state, I shouldn't say that, but in the soul aspect, it's reached a new position, a new understanding, a new field strength. It's changed. And for many, it may seem that they get more in the physical sense, they're getting more aggressive, because for them, this field strength feels very different. And it agitates them in the wrong way. It's rubbing together in the fields, and it's creating a condition where they're getting more, they don't understand it. So for them, for what I think is love, for them is hate, or whatever the word is. And so they're experiencing it in a different way. However, this is affecting many other souls. And so this is going to come to a position where these souls are going to dissolve.
Hey, Dean, I'm going to ask you a question, please.
Please do.
Stepping away for 1 minute. Thank you.
Oh. So Dean, you come up against someone who's giving you that resistance. So you're trying to give them energy, okay? And they're not accepting it, and you become agitated as a result of it. Is that a familiar experience for you?
Maybe when I was a long time ago, but now
Yeah.
no, I don't experience that anymore because I don't interact like that.
Okay, but you can relate to it. You
I
know
can
what
relate to it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course I can.
Okay, so you have adapted to that. And what is the difference between before and now? What is exactly what do you think was causing you to have that agitation?
And that would be lack of understanding. That would be an ignorance to the understanding of the ethos of what we're being experiencing now in this very
Yeah, but
moment.
where are you getting that feeling of agitation from?
That would be a feel strength from another soul or entity and physicality. If we're talking about that, that would be rubbing together or creating a condition to, you know, what's the right word?
I don't know, but I disagree.
Then explain, please explain.
It came from you. You sent energy. It wasn't absorbed. It was reflected. It came right back at you. You were uncomfortable with your own energy.
Yeah, I understand that totally, Alex. Yeah.
And so once you understood that, then you didn't become agitated anymore. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And the way you've explained it, that is so that is through this process of going through the learning process and the experiences of the plasma, and that makes you peaceful. That process, though, as for some, would take up, in the physicality, some moments, or can happen in an instant if they get, if the
Sure. But what I'm really wanting to get to the point is this agitation that you were feeling. I'm going to substitute that feeling of agitation, and I'm going to call it return to sender.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, Alex, because I understand it, and it's what it needs. That is exactly it. And when you understand that, and when you understand those words that you've just spoken, then that changes everything. That does change everything.
Thanks, Dean. You're marvelous.
Thank you, Alex, because between us, we just explained and you brought something up that, yeah, I think that will help many. Thank you, Alex, for your beauty. Thank you.
Well, we solved the world's crisis. I hope Mark is going to be back soon.
I'm back. Gee, that didn't take long.
Yes. I want to thank everybody on the panel for allowing me to present today. And I thank you all for your involvement here. You're part of the important project and part of this important team that is so powerful. We call it the North American team. So I want to thank you all for being here. And we can see that there is a path that we're going down. And it's a path of desire. And the reason for that is because it's part of our vision. Thank you all.
Okay, just another reminder about the next event that's coming up, and there may be some add-ons, as we saw with Dining with the Creator, where we were allowed to go in last week for 30 minutes. Again, if you were to go to Linz originally, that was $1,000, or is it $2,000? I'm not sure. I think it was $1,000 for a 30-minute session. So if you can take advantage of the offer being put forth, again, quite historical, phenomenal, universal, and be part of this bigger change. And you all are, whether you're there or not, as Mr. Kesh said. If you've touched the GANs, made the GANs, delivered the GANs, you're all part of the structure. So just a reminder, the 24th of March, Elevating the Soul of the World Leaders for Peace. It's being offered in the Kesh Foundation store. And you can take that offer up if you'd like. Okay, I'm going to play the Kesh coin and then the final disclaimer. The meeting will end. I want to thank everyone for participating, whether it was on the sound level or on the soul level. And that's all good. So we want to thank you all for contributing, and visit some of the other language communities as we're uniting these different language communities into the one nation, one planet, one race for world peace. It's interesting and nice to sense a different flavor of another language community, even though you don't actually know the language. So just inviting you all. There's an open invitation, especially in the public meetings. They're always happy to have more knowledge seekers there, or even people that aren't knowledge seekers, to come in and join and be part of the event that's happening on this planet. Thank you again, Alex and Dean and everyone.